Hey everybody, this episode contains spoilers. You have been warned. Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, bonus edition. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Spider-Man Superman #1 is the owner of Fat Moose Comics in Whippany, New Jersey, returning guest, Sean Hendricks. Welcome back.
Hello, pal. How you doing?
I guess to sort of follow up on something we talked about last time, what have you found as far as customers realizing that this latest issue is actually a new issue, the second part of a crossover and not a reprint of the first one?
Honestly, I think the majority of the customers knew, unless somebody approached Justin on Wednesday, when it was released and asked him about it. But I think everybody learned from the Deadpool Batman Deadpool debacle that it's brand new stuff, all new stories, all new creators. I don't even think they repeated any cover artists, the variants. So
Right on.
Most of my customers they're pretty savvy. They know what's going on.
All right, cool. Now, Spider-Man Superman #1, just like the previous crossover issue, and just like the Batman Deadpool ones last year, follows the same format. We have a lead story. This time it's by Brad Meltzer and Pepe Larraz. And then here we have 8 backup stories by a mix of creative teams. So we'll go through everything like we did before. But overall, how did you find this one?
Overall, I liked it very, very much. Usually in any anthology, there's 1 or 2 stories you're like, yeah, that wasn't the best. And, as we go through one by one, I'll probably tell you which one I enjoyed the least, not because it was bad at all, but, you have to do your rankings, your mental rankings. That's what I do at night when I go off to sleep. If I've read like 10 comics, I'll run through them in my brain and be like, all right, which was your favorite one you read tonight? Which one, and so I very much did that with this issue.
Yeah, right on. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot as well. I enjoyed the previous one. I liked this one too. We'll get into the backup stories in a little bit, but if you and I had one kind of global complaint about the previous one, I think it was that so many of those backup stories were setting up battles that we were never going to see. And I feel like here they really reined that in. Maybe 1 or 2 instances where we end a story on the cusp of a big battle that we'll never see the resolution to. But that was the exception, whereas last time I felt like it was more of a theme.
Yeah, the last one, some of those stories felt like pitch meetings for possible future team-ups,
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
this one, I think there were definitely at least 2 stories in this one that had that kind of ending. Like, okay, we've worked out our differences. Let's go fight the big bad. Just like that last episode of Angel.
There you go. All right. So our main lead story here by Brad Meltzer and Pepe Larraz, pitting our central characters against Lex Luthor and Norman Osborn. Brad Meltzer.
Yes.
This was very unexpected when they announced him as the writer of this. I mean, obviously he has dabbled in the comic book waters before, notably with Green Arrow, The Archer's Quest and Identity Crisis and his run on Justice League, but it's not an arena we see him in all the time. So I was quite surprised, and pleasantly so, that he was doing this.
Yes. But I think we skipped a part. The universe wants to know, out of all of the variant covers available, I personally had at my shop, I think 25 or 26 variant covers. It was fun. I laid them all out and I told my customers, it's 1 per customer for now. Come back in a few days, whatever's left, scoop it up. But I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get one. I had one guy who I know he has a son. He's like, my son's at work. Can I take 2? I was like, yes, absolutely. But it was fun to watch everybody hem and haw and gnash their teeth over which one cover are they going to take. So Anthony Desiato, when you came into that, what was left all spread out. And I know you're a cover A guy 9 times out of 10, but you had a dilemma.
I did. Perfect setup. Thank you. Yeah. Generally, I don't get too hung up on covers. Historically, and especially now, I'm usually content with the main regular cover A. That's what I had asked you to hold for me. But you really did me a solid. Not only did you put aside that main cover, but you had also held for me the Conduit cover.
Yes.
And it was a little bit of a dilemma, like you were saying, because, again, I typically just gravitate towards the regular cover. And if I'm being completely honest, just in terms of the visual presentation in my heart, I did kind of prefer the main regular cover. Nothing against the Conduit cover. But I said to myself, number one, Sean went out of his way to hold this Conduit cover for me.
It was not that big a deal.
Well, never, that was your last one. I appreciate it. But the other big thing was, I said to myself, here you are. You're always going on and on about Conduit. How on earth could you leave a Conduit variant cover on the table? Literally.
Foil, no less.
Foil, no less. I was like, no, you got to put your money where your mouth is. You got to get the Conduit cover. And so I did. And I thank you very much for saving it for me. And I'm glad I have this one.
And it was the same price, I believe, as the standard cover. So you didn't have to pony up an extra $1 for it. So that was good.
Yeah, but it's like,
as the world's leading and possibly only Conduit fan, I felt like you needed to have that.
I know. It's like, how in good conscience could I not get this? And
it'd be like me passing up a Ghost Rider cover, you know?
I know. It's like, how could I not get it and then continue to complain? Like, why don't they do anything with Conduit? So yes, for anyone who was wondering, I went with the Conduit cover. Which cover did you take home?
I was hovering around. I almost took the foil cover because they're shiny. And this was the night before it was released, so I had my pick of the litter. But I ended up going with the Eric Larson cover, with the Cyborg Spidey and Cyborg Superman, because that storyline Eric Larson did when he took over Amazing Spider-Man after McFarlane scooted. Nobody liked him. And at first I was a little put off. I think it took him a few issues to really hit his stride. But when he did that big crossover event that he did with Punisher and the Hulk and Doc Ock and Cardiac and everything and Deathlock, that's what really cemented my appreciation for his work. So when I see Cyborg Spider-Man, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta get that.
Right on. All right, so back to this lead story here.
Okay, sorry to derail you like that.
No, the people want to know, because last time I think I cut the portion of our conversation about the covers, and then someone asked, so they do care.
See, I know what I'm doing. All right, Brad Meltzer.
Yes. So in this
Pepe Larraz.
In this main story here, we have a weakened, injured Superman and Spider-Man trapped in an undisclosed location. Superman's theorizing that they must have been hit with kryptonite and or magic. And they're trying to figure out what's going on as they're facing this threat, this looming threat of Osborn and Luthor. Superman has to rely on Spider-Man to, what else? Hold up the ceiling, the rubble from collapsing upon them. Because I don't think it could be a Spider-Man story if we don't have him in that classic pose.
And his poor back and his knees have got to be killing him by now after all these years. Constantly lifting rubble.
Yeah, lifting that rubble, really, really carrying them through that really difficult moment. And what he asks of Superman, right, as he himself, as Spider-Man, is exerting the last of his physical energy to save them in this moment, what he asks of Superman is to distract him, to talk to him. Right? Because if he gets in his head, that's Spider-Man's kryptonite. And little tough going at first, but Superman asks, why do you do what you do? Why do you do this? And Spider-Man says guilt. Right? And he explains that bad things are always going to happen, but if something bad happens that I could have stopped, it's my fault. And we'll have a nice payoff to that at the end of the issue, which we'll get to. But I guess at this point in the story, what I want to say is I enjoyed this overall a lot, but there's a part of me that's like, man, I wish the whole thing had just been them trapped. And as I was starting to read this, I'm like, oh, are we doing like a true bottle episode, so to speak? And the whole thing is just going to be the two of them having this heart to heart. And I wouldn't have minded if we had gotten even deeper into the conversation between them. How did you feel? Did you feel the same, or were you happy when we got to the more plot centric part of this and Venom and all of that?
No, I loved the interaction between the two. The dialogue was spot on. A few lines made me actually chuckle. But it did take up the major portion of the story. I mean, yes. Once they break free, spoilers, they break free, go figure. There's, the couple pages where they wrap up the fight, and then the couple pages where Peter goes to the Kent farm with Aunt May to have dinner with the Kents. But the two of them, the bulk of the story is the two of them bouncing off each other while slowly getting squished. Yeah,
slowly getting squished, and also Superman slowly getting depowered, because in the midst of all of this, we have a kryptonite bearing pumpkin bomb land in their midst. And so his power levels are being depleted. And what we find out is that the villain's plan is to weaken him to the point where the Venom symbiote, I say symbiote because I was raised on the 90s animated series, can take over Superman. Now, there is a moment where Peter realizes what's going on and the symbiote makes contact with them, and they have a bit of a mind meld, right? And they get a glimpse into each other's lives, and each of them calls out the other's secret identity in surprise. Spider-Man's like, Clark Kent, and Superman's like, Peter Parker. So not to get hung up on this, but it seems like we're in a different realm than the previous crossover issue where these two guys knew each other in their civilian and superhero identities.
Right. So this is a prequel. We'll leave it.
Sure. Okay. Maybe that's the way to look at it.
Oh.
Yeah, that works. So Venom takes over Superman. I mean, we get this super Venom concoction. What did you make of this?
It looked kind of cool. I'm kind of over all of the was it symbiote? Is that
symbiote? I'll accept either, but
I've heard it both ways. That's for Sal. Yeah, I'm kind of over Null and all this other stuff, and Marvel's got this big Queen in Black event coming up. Most of my customers like, yeah, it's enough. Venom was great concept, great idea. Then they did Carnage, like, okay, a more psychotic version of Venom because Venom's trying to be an anti-hero. And then there's this symbiote and this one and that one and a green one and a blue one. And it's like, all comic books are guilty of taking a good idea and just beating the crap out of it until you're almost sick of it. It's just the way they work. But it was kind of cool to have him possessed by it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool visual. It only gets to play out for a couple of beats, and then you have Spider-Man using his webbing to pull off the kryptonite-bearing pumpkin bomb from Venom Superman's back. And with that gone, then Superman's able to regain his strength enough to break free from the symbiote.
Yeah, basically does like one of those Hulk claps, like making a sonic boom of sorts, because, as we know, the symbiotes are vulnerable to sound waves. So that clears him of the symbiote.
Yeah, and they make quick work of our pair of baddies. And it's not just those two. There are a ton of other villains who are running around, who are in cahoots with Osborn and Luthor. That's one aspect of this. I mean, I know I just said I would have wanted to stay in that trapped location even longer, and I do still stand by that. But once we're out into the real world, yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see more interplay between Goblin and Lex. I mean, there just wasn't much to be had there.
Yeah, they only had a little bit of dialogue. And I'm looking at the double-page spread with the Super Venom and Spidey. Yeah, and you have Taskmaster and Kraven and Deathstroke and Electro and Doc Ock and Brainiac and who else is in there? It looks like a weird-looking Rhino and Parasite. They never get addressed. They're all there. They're just kind of in the background. But then once Superman breaks free, they confront the two main villains and beat them off panel. So I'm assuming they just beat everybody's ass off panel.
Yeah, well, I think they have a line about all of their pals scattering. So I think once Superman was free, most of the villains just kind of hightailed it out of there.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. I forgot about that.
And then we do get that great half-page panel there where Spider-Man and Superman have the other two, and they're like, "Fight back, please," sort of thing.
Yeah, they got their fists cocked back. That's a great shot. Nice piece of art.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get this really, really sweet, poignant epilogue here. First at Uncle Ben's gravesite, where Peter is visiting. It's the anniversary of Uncle Ben's passing. Clark knows this because of this mind meld that they experienced. And Clark brings up what Peter had said when they were trapped about how Peter does this because of guilt. And Clark's like, you don't do this because of guilt. You do it because you were raised by kind, great people who taught you the right thing to do. And Peter's really appreciative of that. And there's this discussion of the wristwatch that Clark had clocked with his X-ray vision on Spider-Man's utility.
Which has one of those lines I mentioned earlier that made me laugh, because he's X-raying, Spider-Man. He goes, "Oh, why do you have a wristwatch in your belt?" And Spider-Man's like, "Wait, are you X-raying me? I don't want to be X-rayed."
Yeah.
And Superman says, "I need to make sure you're not hiding kryptonite in your utility belt." And Spidey just says, "What kind of lunatic hides kryptonite in a utility belt?" I guffawed.
That was funny. We know the exact lunatic who would and
Yes.
does.
My favorite lunatic.
Yeah. But then we have that discussion, that follow-up later on about the wristwatch belonging to Uncle Ben and it being a piece of Ben that Peter carries with him. And Peter says, I assume it's the same as the eyeglasses that you have in your cape. And he explains there were 2 pairs. I know Clark Kent wears one, but the other belongs to Jonathan Kent, which was a nice moment. And they share this idea of keeping a piece of their mentor or father figure with them.
That threw me off for a second because I was like, wait, is John Kent dead in this? Then that's why he's carrying the, because sometimes he's dead, sometimes he's not. You never know.
You never know. And clearly we're not really within a specific continuity in these crossovers, right, especially. So it could have gone any which way.
Yeah, that made me nervous for a second. I'm like, wait, he's carrying the glasses because John's dead, but no, John's alive.
So Clark invites Peter and May over to the farm for dinner. Now, on this note of Jonathan Kent being alive, for you as a reader, did it undermine the weight of that cemetery scene where they're talking about what they've learned from these mentors, these father figures, to then turn the page and have Jonathan there? Like, would it have hit harder if it was just Martha there on the farm, or right, did it land the same?
I'm sure Brad Meltzer had his reasons. It doesn't bother me, but I want to see a thought bubble of Peter like, oh, well, he's got both of his guys there.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm long on the record.
Sour grapes from Pete,
Yeah. No, but it's like, I'm long on the record. I'm a proponent of the Kents being alive for all the reasons that we've talked about over the years. Nevertheless, in this specific isolated instance of this one story, yeah, I don't know. Arguably, it might have carried a little bit more weight if they had both lost the person who had inspired them so. But in any event, it's a really lovely scene at the end. And it's funny. Last time when we talked about the previous crossover special, there was one of the backup stories was Uncle Ben and Jonathan Kent. And I was like, man, I wish they would do a Martha Aunt May pairing. And we didn't get a full dedicated story, but they did have them. They're arm wrestling in one of those final panels.
Yeah, there's a panel of May and Martha arm wrestling. It's adorable.
Yeah, right on. What else about this lead story that we haven't talked about that stood out to you?
Well, like I said before, with that one shot with Spidey and Soups, the art's gorgeous.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very well done. The expressions, not Spidey so much because of the mask, but Superman's pained expressions and everything. And yeah, I just thought it was very, very, what a great way to kick off the whole book.
Right on. Yeah, Sean's got it open there in front of him. He's pouring through it as they're talking.
I just don't want to forget anything.
No, I know.
I read it Tuesday night and I was very tired, but I really, really wanted to read it so I could, talk about it Wednesday, not to spoil it for people, but to say, hey, trust me, you're going to like this. I know which customers would like which particular story. Like, oh, you love, Mysterio. He's in this story very briefly. That kind of crap. I like to be somewhat capable at my job.
Yeah, no, and you are. But yeah, no, this was a really solid lead story. And I guess if you're cool, we can move into the backups, the short stories that followed it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So I'll rattle off the pairings and creative teams, and then we'll dive in further. So we have Spider-Man Noir and Superman by Dan Slott and Marcos Martin, Gwen Stacy and Lana Lang by friend of the podcast, Joe Kelly and Humberto Ramos. We have Mysterio versus Superman featuring The Thing by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Hobgoblin versus Steel by Louise Simonson and Todd Knock. Ghost Spider. You would have preferred Ghost Rider. No, Ghost Spider and Supergirl by Stephanie Phillips and Phil Noto. Miles Morales Spider-Man and Superman by Bendis and Sarah Pichelli. Symbiotes in Metropolis by Jason Aaron and Russell Dodderman. And Spider-Man and Superman by Jeff Loeb and Jim Chung. So I got to say, this first one, Spider-Man Noir, we're in 1938 here in this most of these are 5-page stories. The Mysterio Thing Superman one is 8 pages, and then the Spider-Man Superman one at the very end is just 2. But for the most part, we're talking 5-page stories here. So it's 1938, and we have Spider Noir seeking justice for someone who's about to be executed for a crime they didn't commit. And his plan, he can't save that person on death row, but he can bring the real culprit to justice. And the real culprit is the kingpin of crime, Lex Luthor. And so Spider Noir is prepared to put a permanent end to this villain, but for the arrival of Superman, who won't allow Lex to be executed, but does cart him off to the governor's mansion to get that stay of execution. Very much in the spirit of the opening pages of Action Comics #1.
Yeah, and if you notice the pose when he's carrying Luthor, it apes the Amazing Fantasy 15.
Sure.
Spider-Man swinging with the guy under his arm.
Yeah.
I thought that was a beautiful little homage that Superman is in that pose from Amazing Fantasy. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And who was going to be executed? None other than J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah. Yeah, they framed him as being the big man, the kingpin.
Yeah. So grateful to be alive, though annoyed that it's the Daily Planet and not the Daily Bugle that that got the story.
Man, I love the art in this. I've always loved Marcus Martin's art. Yeah, and that Superman looks great with the old school logo with the red S on the black triangle. I love it.
Yeah, this was fun. I really loved the mood of this. I loved being in the mode of that classic prime golden age Superman. I mean, if we're in 1938, this is the Superman who was raised at the orphanage. I mean, this is really going back to the absolute fundamentals of the character. And yeah, I mean, I really was intrigued by what I saw of Spider-Man Noir here. So yeah, this was a solid start to the back half of our special here.
Very much so.
Next up is Sweethearts, starring Gwen Stacy and Lana Lang. I really enjoyed this one. How about yourself?
The B-listers.
It's heartbreaking when they both in unison, they're talking about, I mean, the setup for this is that we're at Empire State University and we have Gwen and Lana, a little bit of friction between them initially, but then they very quickly unite against these jerks on campus who are being rude. And then they get to talking about the men in their lives, Peter Parker and Clark Kent. And we see so much of the commonality that these heroes share in terms of the way the women who love them describe Clark and Peter. But then there was this moment where they each say, I think I'm going to marry him. And it's heartbreaking because neither one will.
You know, this very much reminded me of the story with Lois and MJ in the previous volume, where they're talking about their menfolk and the trials they face and what good people they are deep down. And so it's kind of a mirror image to that one. It's like, oh, here's the also Rans who didn't make it. I mean, Lana's still alive.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It definitely does call to mind that Lois MJ story from the last one. I guess I wouldn't have minded here if they could have actually done something as opposed to just talking about the guys.
True.
You know, like it would have been interesting to just kind of like follow them through a day on their campus. I mean, I would have been happy to see a day in the college life of Gwen and Lana as opposed to, because again, in terms of what they're saying about Clark and Peter, I don't know that there was anything that was so revelatory per se. Like it was solid, right? And it captures the heart of those characters. But yeah, I wouldn't have minded actually following them on a little bit of an adventure.
Yeah, solve a crime or something. There's one line that did make me chuckle. It's on the page where you see Spider-Man fighting Metallo. And Lana says something about, there's a girl in Metropolis he hangs out with, but I think she's fishy.
Yes.
He's obviously talking about the mermaid, Laurie Lamars, right? Did I get that name right?
You did. Yeah, because there's this moment where this idea comes up about romantic competition. Right. And Gwen has a line about how Lana has restored Gwen's faith in redheads, an obvious reference to Mary Jane. And then, Lana has this bit about, oh, there's this girl at Metropolis University spending time with, but I think she's fishy. So yeah, I like that.
It was cute.
Yeah.
Very cute.
I like the energy of this. And obviously the art contributed so much to that as well. So this was a pairing when they announced this. I was like, oh, like that would be cool to see the two of them together. So this is another instance where, again, I think I would have just liked a little bit more for them to do, but I like the setup of it. And I like the contrast between the city girl and the country girl, between the two of them. So this one was a standout. Actually, would I cite this as my favorite? You
just spent 5 minutes complaining about it.
Not complaining. I
make observations about it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think this actually probably is my favorite.
Really?
Of the backup stories. Yeah. Or if not, it's definitely up there, but yeah.
All right. So since we're not burying the lead on which one is our favorites, up next, my favorite.
Oh, okay. By Jeff Ghost Machine Johns. They brought him back here with his frequent collaborator, Gary Frank. And I think Jeff Johns really wanted to do a Thing story, and they made it fit in a Spider-Man Superman crossover.
It worked.
Obviously, the bulk of Jeff Johns's big two work was at DC, but certainly did a long run on Avengers. Well, actually, relatively short for him, but generally speaking, a long run But prior to that, if I'm not mistaken, I think his first Marvel work, or among the very first things he did, was that Thing miniseries, Freak Show. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, that was oh God, who did the art? The guy that used to do the Flash. Was it
Scott
Scott
Collins.
Collins?
Yeah, Scott
Oh, look at
Collins.
me retaining information. I'm proud of myself. Yeah, that was a good series.
Yeah. So here, the setup, long story short, is that Saturn Queen, an evil version of Saturn Girl, Mysterio, and a Red Lantern have converged to essentially infuse the world with the sense of fury. So everyone's at each other's throats, and they're using the Hulk to sort of broadcast this signal or message of fury. But there are a few people who are essentially immune to it, including Superman, Captain America, Stargirl, Hal Jordan, She-Hulk, and The Thing.
Well, before we even get into the story, I love Gary Frank's art. I have for many, many, many years. I don't remember the first stuff I saw him on, but I mean, that was the cover I almost took. That was my second choice, was the Gary Frank cover with Mysterio on there and stuff, and the Red Lantern reflected in his dome. But yeah, Gary Frank, huge fan, easily in my top 10. And Jeff Johns is no slouch either. And who doesn't love Ben Grimm, you know? And the whole story is told from his perspective. All of the captions are his inner monologue talking about what was happening, why it was happening, and how they have to try and stop it. So it's cool to see, you know, the focus is on Ben, but it's his impression of Superman. It's him basically talking about, so they decide we have to the part that made me laugh though, they said, you know, we decided the only way to stop this is we have to calm the Hulk down. And it cuts to a panel of them jumping on him, Cap's hitting with the shield, and they're all like, well, I don't think that's going to calm him down if you're hitting Hulk in the forehead with your shield. So it's going poorly because it's the Hulk. And Ben gets him in a headlock, sort of. And Superman simply walks up to him, puts his hands on either side of the Hulk's big green dome, and just talks him down. I wonder if he said, you know, the sun's getting pretty low, you know, Black Widow style.
You know, it would have been pretty interesting to actually hear what he said. You know?
Yeah, but you know what? I like it this way.
Okay.
I don't doubt Jeff Johns could have written something, you know, appropriately wonderful for him to say, but I kind of like it's like fill in the blanks there. What do you think he would have said? I kind of like the mystery to that. And it's Ben reacting to saying, like, you know, it didn't happen right away, but the big lug started to slow. Speaking of, you know, the Hulk started to think, pretty sure he even cried. Like, so whatever Superman said to the Hulk calmed him down and actually like made him cry and revert to Banner. And the first thing that Superman says, and Superman's got a bloody nose. He definitely took a few lumps, but he says, "You're safe, Bruce." But I like that you don't know what he's saying. You don't have to know. It's Superman.
Okay. No. Your point is well taken. And in fairness, like you're saying, I mean, the whole story is from Ben's perspective. So the idea that if Superman had kind of taken over in that moment with this big speech, maybe that would have undermined the intent of the story. And yeah, we can certainly fill in what he might have said. I guess from the Ben Grimm perspective, what was interesting in terms of his theory as to why he's immune, it seemed to come down to this idea that it's not that he doesn't get angry, but it's that his anger is directed at himself, you know, right. Which I thought was interesting. And then this whole bit about the importance of conversation and listening to each other. And so he shows up with the box of donuts at the end to talk to Bruce. Now, in the context of this specific story and these characters, sure. However, what do you think? What do you think old Ghost Machine is telling us here? Because I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but obviously we live in very politicized, divisive times. And I couldn't help but feel as I was reading this that it was sort of a message to be open to listening to the other side. I mean, maybe I'm just projecting and I was reading something into it that wasn't there. Did you have a sense of that as you were reading it or no?
You know, I really didn't. Now looking back at it after hearing what you said, I can see it because, you know, after the whole brouhaha, you know, Clark and Ben are talking and Clark says, you know, anger's easy. Listening's hard. Face-to-face still matters. Real people, real conversations. Then this line is great. It's not always clobbering time, Ben.
You know what you remind me of in this episode? Did you watch How I Met Your Mother?
Most of
It
it. I don't
reminded
know
me
if
a
I
little
ever
bit
got
of
around
Sandy Rivers when he would read the newspaper
Oh God, the character was Sandy
to the
Rivers.
audience. But yes, no,
Well,
those are
they
great.
used to always make me read to the class in grade school because I read well and I guess I speak coherently enough. But I got into it. I used to do different voices and stuff, and then I got locked into always having to read the stories because I was the only one really putting some effort into it.
Right on. Yeah,
I got an early start.
and like I said, I don't know if that was Johnson's intention here or not, but I couldn't help but have that thought as I was reading it. And look, at a very fundamental level, I don't disagree. I think it is important to be able to understand other points of view and converse and all of that. But at the same time, and not to get political myself here, but it's just we see such extremes that part of me feels like sometimes we're a little bit past the point of like, oh no, we just need a little conversation. But to the extent that it's a positive outlook or spin that we're trying to find here, I'll go with it.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I didn't read it that way initially. Again, it was late at night and I was very tired. But I see that. It's very subtle though. That's the good thing is it's not, if that was his intent, he did it very well. It's not like beating you over the head with the message,
Yeah,
it's tucked in there. It's tucked into a very, very well done story. Gorgeous art.
I mean, overall, I would say this one was up there for me as well. But so, yeah, I'm glad that this was your favorite of the bunch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm judging that as the backup stories. I'm not including the main story. Yeah. Right. Is that implied?
Yes,
that the main story. Okay. That stands alone.
That stands
alone. Okay.
All right. Hobgoblin versus Steel by Wheezy and Todd Knock. I mean, I am a Hobgoblin fan, but I'm definitely a big John Henry Irons fan. So I was like, oh, this is great. Like he's getting a spotlight here. So John Henry has devised this new creation, Steel Dust, as it's being referred to, which Hobgoblin steals. And I guess we find out ultimately this was all a bit of a setup so that John Henry could field test this. And the Steel Dust does prove quite capable, but it cannot withstand Mjolnir because Thor enters the picture and is able to penetrate that steel dust with the hammer. So this confirms that the dust might be resistant to tech, but not magic.
Yeah. And speaking of Thor, I like it's just classic old school Thor. None of the armor, thank God, no face mask, none of the weird. It's just this is my Thor when I was growing up reading the Avengers and stuff. So it's a timeless piece because they're not trying to shoehorn in any sort of accoutrements on Thor that we're not used to seeing, or I don't know. But this honestly, this may be my least favorite, not for any other reason than don't take this the wrong way. And Justin, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. Don't really care about Steel.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. How dare you?
No. Look, he's fine. He's just never resonated with me. I don't have a problem with him. The movie, whatever. Again, sorry, Justin.
What did Shaq ever do to you other than entertain you for decades? On and off the court. Unbelievable.
No, John Henry Irons, fine character. It gives me the memories of, Death and Rebirth of Superman when that was where he debuted. As I know, that's in your sweet spot.
I've read it once or twice.
Yeah, I was always already a jaded comic book fan by then, being the old guy in the room. But no, the story was fine. They wrapped up very well. I like Todd Knox. Is it Knock? Knock. I like his art. I've always been a fan. He toes that fine line between cartoony but not too cartoony. It's exaggerated but not ridiculous.
I've been a fan of his since Young Justice, and when I first started going to New York Comic Con, I mean, he was one of the very first artists I started getting sketches from. So I've got a Superboy, a Kid Flash, I think a Robin from him. I got a bunch of stuff from him. So no, I've always been a big fan. Obviously, I love John Henry Irons at the same time, and I love Wheezy. But yeah, this felt pretty light to me. I mean, I feel like most of the other ones had like something to say, and I felt like this one was pretty light. So it was a light, quick read. Nothing offensive about it, but yeah, this one, even though I was happy to see Steel get some time, yeah, this one didn't do much for me.
I would have liked to have seen if they could have had a couple more pages to see Steel and Thor interact together a bit more, because it's one page, a couple of word balloons, and they're done.
Well,
You
and
know,
because the whole contrast between the tech and the magic is interesting. So that could have
right?
been something. I think, look, and we hit on this last time too, where, right, remember last time it was the Superboy Prime black costume Spider-Man one? Like that story had went on for quite a bit and then just kind of
Yeah.
ended on a cliffhanger. And my takeaway was, hey, maybe we could have reallocated some of this page count. And I feel like, yeah, with the structure here, I think overall this is working for the publishers and it's fine. But yeah, I think every now and then I think some of these stories kind of reveal the limitations of it. And so something like this, you only get a few pages, you can kind of only go so far. So yeah, I mean, it would have been interesting, I think, yeah, to get into a little bit more of that relationship between those two heroes.
Yeah, it was very brief, and it was cute, but not much happened. Not much character study going on. I don't expect a Dark Night of the Soul thing. Where it's all introspective, but it was very breezy. That's all. It was in and out real quick.
Breezy by Wheezy, so maybe it was appropriate.
There you go.
All right, man, I hate to say this because I've become a fan of Ghost Spider, or Ghosty as I know her, because my son had been a big fan of Spidey and His Amazing Friends. Now, as he's approaching 7 years old, he's too mature for it and he doesn't want to watch it anymore.
He's right on to the Watchmen now, right?
Yeah. Straight to BVS. Teach him right. No, but so, that was really kind of the way that I got to meet and spend a lot more time with Miles and Gwen, was through that kid show on Disney, which was a really cute, fun show. And on the Supergirl front, I mean, here we are in the thick of our Supergirl coverage here on this podcast. So I have a lot of affinity for both of these characters, but man, this story, I did not care for this.
Really? All right.
It was fun.
I actually liked it quite a bit. Just for the ending alone, the little twist at the end.
Sure.
Because they're very, they don't get along so well.
They don't get along, and that's clear from the jump, where each of them is clearly expecting the male counterpart, right? Supergirl is expecting to see Spider-Man. The Ghost Spider is expecting to see Superman. And so there's this element of disappointment.
An autograph book. Yeah, she's waiting to get Superman's autograph.
Yeah, so there's this element of disappointment, and like they're very quickly antagonistic towards each other. And I guess maybe the missing piece for me was why? Like, I mean, I don't know, or if we're just supposed to take it for granted and not think about it too much. But yeah, I wouldn't have minded a little bit more of an accounting for why they had the expectations they did and why they were so quick to turn on each other.
Well, I've seen enough reality TV to know women never get along.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I feel like this does a little bit of a disservice to them. Yeah, I mean, I would expect more of them.
Yeah, it definitely leaned into the like, oh, it's you. Oh crap, it's you. I thought it was the other one. Yeah, it's they're a little snarkier than I'm used to. I haven't been reading Supergirl in a long time. I'm not reading the new series, so I'm not sure how she's being characterized these days. But I also know these stories take place outside of any rational continuity. So I don't know what version of Supergirl this is. Now, making her a little snarky and a little angry, I think might be on purpose, because that's kind of how she seems to be portrayed, at least in a good chunk of the new movie coming out, kind of angry at the world and stuff. So I figure her characterization might lean into that a little bit. Like, hey, in the movie, she's going to be a little like, hey, what the hell is this? Let's write her that way. As far as Gwen Ghost Spider, I don't know. I don't know why she's being kind of crabby.
Yeah, and all to say, it's like I'm not inherently opposed to a story where they don't get along, they're at odds, something comes between them. I think there could be a perfectly valid story to tell in that vein. I think the issue that I just had was that it was just baked into the premise, and we were asked to instantly buy into that. And in any event, then they get pulled into this battle with Livewire that is over relatively quickly, and then Supergirl does sign the autograph book.
Yeah, as she's flying away, she goes, "Oh, by the way, you dropped this," and she tosses the autograph book to Ghost Spider. And then in the back, the inscription is, "To one of the 5 million spider-powered heroes of Supergirl." And the last bit, the thought balloon or caption from Ghost Spider is, "I like her." So they became friends, I guess.
But and yes, that inscription is a callback to a dig that Supergirl had made on that opening page. But I guess just as I didn't really buy into their antagonism towards each other at the jump. I also didn't really buy Ghost Spider's quick turn at the end of I don't, there was something missing for me here in this one. And hopefully other people got more mileage out of it. But yeah, there's something missing here for me.
Wait, so was this your least favorite?
Yes.
Ah, there you go. Okay, well, let's lean into the positive then. You can't deny the art is gorgeous.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Phil Noto, I mean, he's a master.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, I wanted to like this guy. I do quite care for the characters, but yeah, this one just didn't totally land for me. Okay.
Gotcha.
And then we have Miles Morales and Superman by Bendis and Sarah Pichelli, where basically Miles comes upon, while he's on patrol, he comes upon an injured Superman who has been engaged in battle with the team of Brainiac and Dormammu. So quite the pairing here. And essentially this comes down to a moment while Superman is recovering before they re-engage in the battle. And Miles takes this opportunity to pick the brain of the first and greatest superhero and ask him basically what should I ask you? What don't I know? What do you know now that you can impart to me? And Superman's response more or less is about the importance of showing up and trying and not worrying about whether or not every choice you make is the right one. That simply by showing up with the intention to do good, that is the right choice, which I thought was a very nice message.
Very much so. Yeah. So basically, when Miles finds Superman, he's been pummeled by magic and kryptonite, his two big weaknesses. So yeah, Miles disposes of the kryptonite, and that's when they start talking. But I love the moment when Superman says, "What's your name, son?" And Miles says, "Miles Morales." He goes, "I mean Spider-Man." I don't know why I said my real name. I'm not supposed to say that. I just love that he's so taken aback by meeting Superman that he just blurts out. It reminded me a bit of when Ant-Man meets Captain America in Civil War, and he's just like stumbling over his words because he's just so starstruck, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice moment.
Yeah. And then this one does adhere to that formula we saw last time where we end with them about to engage in this battle. But like I said, I mean, here, this was a rarity rather than a frequent occurrence. So I didn't mind kind of ending on the precipice of battle.
Yeah, this one, it didn't bother me. Sometimes those kind of endings, if they're over, at least they had some nice character interaction first.
Yes.
And the final, when Superman says, "That said, would you like to punch a giant demonic robot spaceship in the face with me?" It's a good line.
Yeah.
Giant demonic robot spaceship. I think that's my next band name.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I'm going to write that one down. Nobody steal that band name, all right? Knock it off.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
Mine. Dibs.
All right. And then moving on to our penultimate story here, Symbiotes in Metropolis by Jason Aaron and Russell Dodderman, where we have our Jane Foster Thor and Wonder Woman engaged in this battle against the armies of Darkseid, who took over Asgard and has souped up his parademons with symbiotes. Quite a theme here. We have a lot of these symbiotes.
There's a lot of moving parts in this one. Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you make of this one?
I liked it quite a bit. I mean, first of all, I'll just say right out, Russell Dodderman, impeccable. His art is just gorgeous. And it's a cool little mashup. Yeah. Apocalypse, Darkseid takes over Asgard. Odin's been crucified onto the source wall, which that would have been a cool visual. I wish they did a panel of that.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of neat. Thor's been beaten and unworthy. So now, yeah, Jane's got the hammer, and she's still, it seems like the early days of her having the hammer, because she seems very uncertain of herself.
Yeah, very much. I guess what really stood out to me, what I liked about this was the way these two women see each other and see each other very truly with their divine vision, right? And each see the worthiness of the other. And especially, I think, what Diana sees in Jane, because for Jane, like you said, I think, new at this and not quite sure if she should bear Mjolnir and all of that. So, yeah, I mean, I liked that dynamic between the two of them. I guess I'm not entirely sure how this fits per se into Superman, Spider-Man necessarily.
Yeah, symbiotes, that's a Spidey thing.
Yeah, and they're in Metropolis, so I guess that's. I feel like this is a bit of.
It's perfectly valid.
I feel like this is a little bit of a stretch, but it's okay.
It was cute though. I like when Wonder Woman calls her Jane tossed her, and Jane said, "How do you know my name?" And Wonder Woman says, we made a bet. Superman thought you were secretly Lois Lane. I thought Donna Troy, but we were wrong. I love the line. Batman refused to guess. He just kept complaining about you stealing Thor's name. Batman, ever the dick, man. Batman's just gotta complain.
I know.
That was a good line, though. But yeah. So Wonder Woman sees it basically into Jane's heart by using the lasso, and she sees that Jane is dying of cancer, and she's basically like, yeah, but you're a hero right now, right here. Like, don't worry about that. I don't know, but I do love that Darkseid shows up with the all black anti-life blade, mixing up, Null with Dark. But this one does, and I forgot this one does end with we're all rushing into the big battle. So that's the second story in this one that does that ending.
I know, but here we have the narration about how the tales of this battle would be told or something like that. There was enough of a sense of, it's all going to work out and this will kind of live on as legend, where I felt like, okay, I kind of know where we're going here. So I was more okay with this, I think, than some of those other instances we saw.
Yeah, this one didn't bother me because, again, you do get some nice character interaction before the big, now we're going to go fight the big bad. So, and it's just so goddamn lovely to look at. So, yeah, I liked it.
All right, and then our final one here is a real quick 2-pager by Jeff Loeb and Jim Chung, where we have a grief-stricken Peter Parker atop the bridge pre-dawn. And Superman finds him, and Peter talks about failing to protect someone, clearly referring to Gwen Stacy, and talking about how someone he loved died because he was Spider-Man. And Superman talks to him about how grief isn't a competition and there's no right way, and some days will be better than others. What was your takeaway from this one?
Well, all right. So obviously Spidey's sitting on the bridge where Gwen fell, because he's like looking despondent down into the waters. I mean, that's got to be the spy. He's not just. It was brief, but it was heartfelt. And I gotta say, Jim Chung. I love Spidey's eyes. Very early Spidey Ditko. Because I don't even know if his eyes look like that around the time Gwen died. I thought by then his eyes were a little bigger because it was Romita doing the art. But this is a very Ditko Spidey, down to the web wings even. So I just like, as far as the aesthetic of Spidey, those eyes, I had forgotten how much I like those kind of more squinty, as opposed to the giant McFarlane googly eyes. But as far as the story itself, again, very brief, but that's all you needed. What's Superman for if not to inspire other people to do the right thing and to deal with grief and to look at the bright side? And yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah. I mean, it did kind of make me feel like I was back in Spider-Man Blue territory, and even For All Seasons, because what Superman quotes, if memory serves, does come right from For All Seasons. This idea that Pa expresses about how there are only two things that are certain in this life, that you'll be born and that you'll die. And everything that happens in between is up to you. So again, I think I like the message of it, and it definitely harkens back to those really poignant, heartfelt tales, Spider-Man Blue and Superman For All Seasons. I suppose this is probably one more instance where I don't know, I just would have liked a little bit more room for this to breathe. I don't know, maybe there was nowhere else for it to go, but I guess I would have been okay maybe slicing a couple of pages off of your favorite one, the Thing story, and reallocating them here.
You jerk. Well, wait, so Superman said that, he says, my pa once told me there are only two things are certain in life. You're born and you die. You don't have anything to say about either of them. What matters is what you do in between those two things. That was from For All Seasons. I haven't read that book in so long.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, it really sounds like it could be, and that's why I'm thinking it. But I'm almost certain, or at least that idea.
But it's a nice way to wrap up the book.
Yeah, for sure. No, this was a lot of this was a lot of fun, and I think a number of these pairings, and I'll keep going back to Gwen and Lana. Like some of them, I'm like, oh, like that was really cool, and it makes sense, and it was interesting to see, even if I would have wanted a little bit more. Some of the pairings, like Steel and Hobgoblin, it's like, okay, sure, it's fine. I think some are a little bit more interesting than others, but yeah, I mean, I love having the opportunity for stuff like this. And I guess the other thing that I recognize, and maybe I said this exact thing a few weeks ago when we talked about the first one, but I think maybe with some of these stories, I sort of feel like, oh, okay, like, I don't know that this really told me anything that I didn't already know about these characters, but at the same time, maybe I'm not necessarily the target audience. I mean, maybe if you have someone who really doesn't have any experience with these characters or with half of these characters, this can be really insightful and educational, and maybe you get a little bit more out of it.
Yeah, it's a good gateway drug. I definitely did that with the Batman, Deadpool, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. Customers came in maybe with their kids, they were looking for something. So here you go. Here's a ton of characters by a ton of creators. The stories are self-contained, more or less. You don't really need to know anything. You could just hop in, and that's what we call, in the business, an evergreen book. It doesn't take place at any specific time. It doesn't tie into anything. You can keep that on a shelf. If it doesn't sell today, it might sell a month from now. You could keep it on the shelf, and somebody might pick up a copy 2 years from now. It's a timeless book, and those are always good to have in a shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for pulling the book for me, and especially for saving that conduit cover. I really do appreciate
Conduit,
it.
baby.
I had fun hanging out at the shop and getting to chat with you in person. I encourage everyone to visit the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page to come see you in person in Whippany if they're in the area, to check out your YouTube channel as well. Anything else you want to share with folks?
No, it's the next week and change is going to be just me busy gearing up for not Free Comic Book Day. Free Comic Book Day is dead. Thanks to Diamond. It is now called Comic Book Giveaway Day. Unwieldy, but I guess I'll have to get used to it. So that will be the first Saturday in May. Having a big sale. We're not having any guests or anything because I want to maximize my space so people can walk around and not feel crowded in, and so I can sell a bunch of stuff. Really. And we're going to have a selection of free books, and everything else can be on sale. I'm not announcing it here because that seems just low class. I'll just put it on Facebook and stuff. But, and we will have some leftovers from Superman Day this past Saturday. I had some books left, so I'll put those out with the free books. So it'll be Comic Book Giveaway Day plus Superman Day leftovers. So there'll be plenty to choose from.
Awesome. I hope everyone will check that out. Audience, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a really fun, exciting time around here. We are in the midst of our Supergirl coverage, so I hope you've been enjoying that. Keep tuning in. Over on the Batman front, Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey is underway. We just dropped episode 2 on Batman No Man's Land. I hope that you will give that a listen. Until next time, remember, it's about what you do. It's about action. Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. By popular demand, Digging for Kryptonite merch is available at our TeePublic store. Visit the link in the show notes to get your DFK shirts, hats, mugs, and more. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey, which applies the signature Digging for Kryptonite approach to the Dark Knight, as well as another exciting episode in the adventures of Superman, now in its final year covering the classic George Reeves series. Subscribe today. Digging for Kryptonite is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons, and theme music by Dan Pritchard.